Financial Services, and today the community briefing together with the Black Business Association and who else?
Everybody.
Everybody welcome you here to Crenshaw Corridor Symposium. We have a wonderful program for you. A couple of housekeeping. Please mute your phones at this stage. Somebody's phone will go off, and you don't want to be the one because we will call you out. And there are restrooms that are around behind us, so if you need to use that, it'll be fine. And then now it is my pleasure to welcome the queen of our community briefing, Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Hey, thank you guys. So this is the inspiration that came to me during the pandemic, the community briefing. I just wanted to make sure that our community got information in real time. I know usually we get it like last minute and we don't get anything that we needed. And I knew that it was detrimental that we got that information. So I wanted to make sure while the banks were handing out all that money to everybody that we knew where it was going and how we could apply for it. So I called in all of my friends. I have a friend named Sherri Avanth tells me that I'm a people collector. So I start going through my people and I start collecting, and I put together a presentation and I said, this is what's going to happen. And so friends of mine, Greg and Stephen Turner, came together and said, Crystal, I want in on this. And I was like, what is this? And so then that is how the community briefing came about. But I'm the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars. And one of the things that Mohammed Nazardine, you all know Mohammed Nazardine, was that our community needed to come together and work together, collaborate together to make our dollars circulate and to make sure that we're a powerful force in our community. That is the purpose of the community briefing. So every Thursday at 11 o'clock, we are here to bring valuable information from our stakeholders and our leaders that are making decisions about us, sitting at tables, having meetings, and we want that information to be disseminated to our community so we can have conversations, so we can change the paradigm, as Michael always says, so the information is disseminated to the people that is creating some resistance. So today, that's what we're doing here today. So we want to thank you all here. We want to thank our sponsors. This platform is powered by Recycling Black Dollars and partnered with the BBA purposely because this is a community coming together. So this is our platform, everybody in this community, and as well as our monetary sponsors, which is Southern California Edison, Los Angeles LDC, SoCal Gas, as well as Wells Fargo Bank. And so we want to thank you, and we are excited. And thank you guys for all coming out today for our very first breakout symposium. So thank you. And so with that, we are going to kick it off.
And welcome to our Zoom audience. We have a Zoom audience. We have I don't have many people we had. We had about
50 people on Zoom right now, and we just went
hello
live
to the Zoom
on
audience.
Facebook.
Yeah, and we're live on Facebook. So we talked about anybody, we talked about everybody and everybody, but now in the spirit of Jesse Jackson, I am. Let's do it again. I am
somebody.
I am somebody. All right. So I think now we are bringing up our the host. We're here because of the benefits and the gratitude and invitation of Chase Bank. I almost said Chase Manhattan Bank. I've been a long time Chase. So JP Morgan Chase, and this is a community branch. And Tatiana Roberts is going to come up and just say a few words. So thank you very much, and welcome her.
I don't think I need a mic, but hi everyone. My name is Tatiana Roberts. It's a pleasure to host you today. I am the community manager here. What does that even mean, right? So what I do is I bring financial health to the community. I work with nonprofits to be able to help close the racial wealth gap. I've been in banking for the last 17 years, okay? I was a branch manager prior to this role, and to say that I'm fulfilled is an understatement. I get to work with schools. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go to math and college prep after to teach the seniors how to manage their money before they go off to college. So we're having conversations that have never really been had before with the bank. So I'm just very happy to host you. I'm very happy for you to use this space. This space was really created for you. So please connect with me if you are interested in using this space, having an activation here, because we're here to serve you. I want to thank you, and I want to thank the Black Business Association for everything that you do for our small business here in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And who's next? Huh? Hakeem. Oh, yes, yes. So we have a special presentation from the city of Los Angeles. And Hakeem, I forgot your full name. Hakeem Park Givens? Park Davis. Okay, so please join me in welcoming Hakeem Park Davis. And I think you're going to share one of these mics here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hakeem. I am a city planner by trade and profession. I work here in Council District 10 as your deputy for planning and land use and economic development topics. Heather Hutt is the councilwoman in Council District 10. We're actually standing in Council District 8. Council District 10 is just right across the street. And I just wanted to be here today to welcome you guys to the community. Thank you for being here, for the things that you do for the community, those who invest here, those who work here, those who start businesses here. It's a very centered place, really, in the world. If you think about where we are, the Crenshaw Corridor, it resonates with people around the world. Our culture, our arts, our economy, people know us, right? And we are here in a monumental time in history where we have the passion to reflect on our past and see that this was once upon a time a community where Black people were not even welcome. This is a community that in the present is in the influx of change and generational shift. And as we look forward to the future, we're seeing the opportunity and potential for our future generations, for our children, the children I don't have yet. So with that being said, the work that this organization, the BBA, is doing to bring us together, to connect our resources, to bring us the opportunity that we all have the dream of, it's very monumental in scope. So I just wanted to be here to thank you guys for your participation, and also just welcome you to the community. And if there's anything that I can do to help you, let me know. I'm available at City Hall anytime. You give us a call, Council District 10, on the topics of land use, planning, and economic development in general. We're seeing, just from a planning and land use perspective, this community specifically has been a center of commercial activity over the years. And we're really going through a generational shift, like I mentioned before, where we're starting to see an influx of housing product come on. We're starting to see a new generation of businesses starting up. And it's really important that we support this work and we support the businesses that are here. There's someone special in the audience that I do want to acknowledge real quick. And I'm going to ask him to stand up. That would be Kyle Winston. He's my counterpart. He's also a city planner. He is the city planner. And a lot of the change and a lot of the work, that you see here on the Crenshaw Corridor in the West Adams area, on Jefferson, on Washington, that has a lot to do with the work that Kyle does, interfacing with the developers and interfacing with the community. So Kyle is also a resource. He's with the Department of City Planning, and you can reach him through that department. So I'll leave it there, and thank you for having me. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so are we ready to kick off the program?
Yes.
Ready. So oh, there you go. Our moderator. Okay, yeah, come on up. So Mr. Michael Anderson, I don't have your bio up here, but are you gonna? Okay, so Michael is gonna tell you all about himself. This is phenomenal, guys. We had Michael on as a guest. I've had him on my podcast, The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert. Then we had him on the community briefing. This man is inspirational. He has done a lot of work in the community, as all of you have. We have been so connected in this community because we love this community, right? And so Michael is very passionate, as well as everyone on our panel here is very passionate in what is going on in our community. So he agreed to be a moderator today. And so we have a phenomenal panel of people that love this community. And I believe all of you in this community love this community. And as Greg said today, he said he gave his blood today for his community. So
And
I
welcome
think
Greg Doolin.
Greg Doolin.
He is a business owner here in the Crenshaw Corridor.
And I believe we all give our blood in some capacity to this community. So I want to welcome Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay.
I'll give a quick
We're going to go do the Zoom thing.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Zoom, zoom, zoom.
So I'll
Thank you,
do
everybody.
a quick introduction of my background in Crenshaw. I did my first project. Is the mic on? Okay. I did my first project in Crenshaw in 1983. It was a facade improvement project that was supposed to revitalize the area. It didn't. And over the past 40 plus years in architecture and urban design, I've assisted the city of Santa Monica with the studies for 3rd Street Promenade. I've done many projects in West Hollywood, Santa Monica Boulevard, as you see that whole beautification. But the thing that's always frustrated me is we never get those products, right? And that, as a result, we keep losing the next generation of young black and brown entrepreneurs to other marketplaces. So I wrote a book about it called Urban Magic, Vibrant, I wrote a book called Urban Magic, Vibrant Black and Brown Communities Are Possible, that talked about the journey that I went on in transforming other places, but what's not happening in Crenshaw, that makes a business strategy to bring the right amount of capital that nurtures investment into the community, that creates a platform for success. So quickly, I'm gonna go through a slideshow to show you some things that are going on, the past of Crenshaw as well as the future. And so we know, one of the things I love is that Maverick Flats made the Temptations famous, way before I came to Los Angeles. But the history of all the culture, the things that's been going on, hasn't stayed here where it's graduated to the next generation. Vision Theater's in the process of becoming transformed as a place-making destination. That's the opportunity for Black Hollywood to do screenings where you're bringing events that bring people from outside the community to the community that will then help the existing small businesses in the area. But you have the K-Land, which I was the author for the study for Metro to do those TOD studies, okay? To do those TOD studies. And then one of the things I love is Horace Tapscott, who came from Central Avenue and migrated over here with jazz and things. That culture kind of gets lost because we don't have the success of economic development we look for. Next slide. If it changes. Okay, so Lemert Park, these two parcels of land, in my understanding, is an RFP has been put out for development to develop these parkings. Lots. I did a study in 2006 and 2008 that caused a protest called Save Lemert. but my disappointment was that was an opportunity to get the right type of mixed-use development that then would have led that transformation of that site versus doing something almost 15 years later. Santa Barbara Plaza, Magic Johnson tried to develop. That didn't happen, but now another company has bought it. And now you see the properties, once a market becomes hot, people start buying property for investment. And often it's not us. Next slide. So I think it's Hedgebrook Partners have bought Santa Barbara Plaza. This is their proposal to develop it. Meta Housing, which is a company I've worked with, has done the senior housing, and you have the Kaiser facility. CIM is investing CalPERS money into creating commercial office space to the north end, which I really would like to see down here on this end because we need daytime salaries in the area for places like Hot and Cool Cafe to start making money at 6 o'clock in the morning all the way to 6 o'clock at night. That's economic development. And you see what Watts proposed up at the north end? Next slide. And so we're getting affordable housing developments, which I'm a fan of, but affordable housing developments does not trigger daytime sales the way that we need to if we had jobs here. Also, younger generation needs to see people that look like this audience here so that they can see I want to be like Jason and do Destination Crenshaw, right? Be people that make changes. And this is what's planned for Dorset Village off of 8th Avenue and Slauson near Crenshaw. Next. And so I think the goal, all the studies I've done, the community has always asked for, so in the 90s they said, we want Starbucks. And when I started doing studies in 2000, they're like, we want Trader Joe's. In my heart, that meant we want the quality of life of community where Trader Joe's exists. That's what they want. And that's economic development. So you see Santa Monica Boulevard for the last 25 years, that city of West Hollywood has been investing in Santa Monica Boulevard to nurture ongoing development. That is what we want for Crenshaw, and that's what I see the future of Crenshaw being. Next. So one of the things, so there's going to be two parts to this conversation today. The first is creating a paradigm shift to cost development and investment. The second is preservation of black culture in the community. And for me, that's home ownership. And that's the new model of home ownership. So in West Hollywood, I was designing duplexes on single-family lots in the 80s. And I was like, that's what we should be doing in Crenshaw. But now I'm going to talk about the program briefly that I'm working on with the federal government and a lot of other organizations called the Modernization of Underserved Communities that takes advantage of the Biden funding to make significant investments into our communities. And the goal is for black and brown families to get a fourplex where they have a house plus 3 income units. Next slide. And so one of the things in fear of change in the community is how do you benefit the existing community? So this is a product of remodeling mom's house on steroids where it becomes a fourplex using prefabricated housing in the back. And the purpose is mom can rent to her kids and grandkids and actually her parent, where mom would get a climate funding of $250,000 to subsidize that investment. This way you have a house plus 3 income units that also helps bring more housing into our market. Economically, what I'm doing is putting 4 salaries on a single family lot. That raises that average lot income from $50,000 to almost $300,000. Next slide. So I'm nurturing, so I built some homes on Leimert Park between 4th and 6th Avenue in Vernon, if you've seen those. Those sold for $154,000. I negotiated $54,000 in grants and subsidies for the families only to put down $8,000. So they had a house, you know, with income. I'm doing the same thing here where younger generation of black and brown people would get $500,000 to $600,000 and they will get a fourplex where they have their house and they have 3 income units. This makes possible for black and brown people to pay for their children's education because you're not borrowing out of your asset. And it makes each family worth $2 million. And so the purpose is how do we start building black wealth and replenish the cultures community with the younger generation? Next. So all of this is to create an energy that creates a vibe to bring the younger generation, the Issa Rays, Jason lives in the community, I guess, but others to the community of higher income, that their lifestyles come to the commercial corridors and mix in with the existing businesses. But the most important thing is when banks want to make investments in communities, they look at what's the value of the housing stock, what's the value of the building permits that are going in place, what's the cash flow. That's called a local market economy. And we have to nurture this local market economy to be just as vibrant as any place else. Next. And so the most important reason why I do this that comes to my heart is when parents do well, kids do well. And the fundamental thing of home ownership does, it makes possible for families to nurture their kids. Next. So we now have a major opportunity. I'm not going to stay on this, but one of the things that impedes development in any place is infrastructure. All the infrastructure in black communities is 100 years old. So if a developer wants to come in and build something, DWP says you have to upgrade the electrical system. You have to upgrade the water system. The Biden administration has put $1.2 trillion in place to pay for that. We have to be able to figure out how to make the deal for Biden administration to say that, right? So we're talking about rebuilding the utilities. I'll explain that in the next panel when we talk, when I'm on the panel, whatever. To rebuild the streets, the utilities, and the sidewalks. Take that cost out of development that makes it more attractive to invest in the community. Next. And we redo the alleys so that the gates can come down and they be remote control. So the Biden administration has an executive order to advance racial equity. We have $1.7 trillion in funding available, which Justice 40 and Executive Act says priority is for underserved communities. That's $640 billion. And the question is, do we have the deal to ask for that magnitude of money that we need in the community? And that's one of the things I'm going to ask the panelists is what magnitude of investment you think is necessary to make Crenshaw successful. But this project means this money has to be spent by 2026. So I met with DOT when I was in DC in March, and they have $110 billion in uncommitted funds for transit investment. Next. So this is our amazing panel, which we're going to be talking to about investments into the communities, and I'm going to ask them 3 specific questions. You know, they'll introduce themselves, but Jason's doing Destination Crenshaw. Danny's a second-generation investor. I call him the future Ted Turner, and also, you know, real estate investor. And then Daryl Carter can talk about his projects. And this talks about creating community investment. Next panel. And so the next panel, I'll be sitting here, and you have Sherri Franklin and Sarah Harris of the Black Business Association. And we're going to talk about preserving the black heritage, which I'm going to talk about through homeownership. And with that, I guess we'll get started. Okay, so the panelists, if you all want to come up, and I'll start asking you questions. And I hope you all, thank you. Thank you. So I'll do this. So I'm going to start. Are you ready?
No, just on.
And Greg, can I ask this? Is somebody going to be able to tell us where we are in timing? Because I have no. Yeah, I have no consciousness of what time. This. Okay. Sarah's got it. Okay. Okay.
You're good.
So do I talk in both of these? This is for this audience.
Yeah, that's for
Okay.
this audience.
Okay.
We're good with this.
Okay. Okay. So. So. Oh no, I know we got a stop timeline, so I'm kind of hoping. I have 3 questions, so we're going to have to break it down between the divisiveness of that time. So I'm going to start with Jason. And again, the purpose of this panel is to talk about creating a development paradigm of community ownership and control. And so the first question to Jason is going to be, tell us about your efforts and work to help shape and make a difference in the corridor. And I picked you because you're doing a powerful project.
Cool. So I appreciate you for your opening words, Michael. I think it was 2.5 years ago, we had a Zoom during the pandemic. He showed me the deck of the project that he was working on, and I've been a fan ever since. I read your book, and I shared it to people because Destination Crenshaw, which is the organization that I work for, is actually trying to live out creating a vibrant community for Black people, keeping us in place, and actually accomplishing improving and staying. This? It's not on.
Yeah, we'll need your schoolyard voices today.
No worries.
I know you're not scared.
Never scared. And so, you know, as Michael said, as a resident of this community, I live off of Manchester and Western. I live there because that's where I can afford, right? So I think we need to actually start thinking about Black community as it is, right? And why we have to sacrifice aesthetic choices, design, quality of life issues, power, water, streetscape, sidewalk. Why do we sacrifice these things to stay in Black community? Why don't we force the conversation past our residential, past our commercial, to our infrastructure, to the quality of life questions that we ask every single day, right? So it is, in essence, Destination Crenshaw is validating your 311 call about a pothole. We are trying to work on the things that actually you own as a community. As a voter, you own the public right-of-way. So this is all about community ownership. And so my project is trying to set the foundation for the layering of intentional investment to create the community that we want, focusing on the public right-of-way. I am branding for the future of Black LA. I am trying to get investors to be interested in creating the tools that we need to deal with the risk that they use to keep our communities down, right? How do we make sure it's a sure bet? We have Black artists perform in space because that is the chief export of Black people, is our art. So we put our art in space. We actually utilize that to actually drive value for the people that have made Crenshaw what it is already. We focus on the legacy business owners. We focus on Greg. We make sure that Greg is okay first. We make sure that Ms. Bronny keeps ownership of her property next, right? And then we find the Black investors to actually come and actually support the development of future communities, right? We actually plan on the marathon. Right. We don't think about the sprint because we know the resiliency that we have in a community. It's all about our infrastructure. It's all about our ecosystem and how we support that. So my job is to support these two, right? I make the investment safer because the conversation is about convincing the banks that we are worthy of investments. right? And so how do we deal with that conversation, and how we make sure that we support our investors is by working on those essential infrastructure questions.
That's an amazing answer. And actually, Martin Luther King said something very strong. There's a direct and indirect relationship between all of us. What he was talking about, the public streets, the public spaces, that's that direct and indirect connection between your house, the quality of the retail, and the quality of life when we walk down those streets. There's a different feeling you have when you're on Sunset Boulevard driving towards Westwood than you have when you come down Adams and Crenshaw and start going down and then make a left on Vernon. Your physical awareness and radar goes off differently in your comfort zone. Either you got your top down or you got your top up. So those are the things that he's talking about, very important. And so, Danny, I'm going to put the question to you, the same question, which is, tell us about your efforts to work and help shape and make a difference in the corridor.
So my name is Danny Bakewell Jr., for those of you who don't know me. I am the Executive Vice President, and I'm a second-generation real estate developer. My father, Danny Bakewell Sr., is the founder of the Bakewell Company. We do major development, probably one of the largest wholly owned African-American development companies and real estate holding companies, certainly in the western United States, certainly in California. You actually happen to be sitting in our building. So we are the owners of this building where this Chase branch is. We call it the Bakewell Building. Other people refer to it as the Chase Building, but it is the Bakewell family, Bakewell Company, who actually owns this building. Thank you, sir. We also own major real estate development in the city of Compton, in northwest Pasadena, South Los Angeles, the city of Seaside, in the Central Coast. For me, it is about, and our core business is about the quality of life of African Americans first and foremost in uplifting our community. As I said, we own this building. Chase is a tenant in this building, but they make a significant investment in this community. This beautiful edifice and this beautiful branch that you see and you're all sitting in right now is the result of what we are committed to, bringing quality institutions, quality businesses, quality tenants into our community to make sure that we don't accept a substandard branch. We've seen other branches, we've gone into other branches, which we don't feel are of the same quality as other branches in other communities. But when you come into this branch, you see people behind the windows who are here, standing here, that look like you. And this is probably one of the most beautiful bank buildings you're going to find. It doesn't matter if we're in Beverly Hills, if we're in Santa Monica, if we're wherever we are. This building, this branch, can compete with any branch you can go into. And that's what we as a developer fight for. We get these things and we demand that we get a standard of quality that our community needs and deserves, because we want and need things. We have major retail shopping centers. None of our shopping centers have a gate around them, because as my dad said a long time ago, if you give our community quality tenants and quality things, they will take care of that, okay? Many of you know, above and beyond us as a real estate development company, you know it for Taste of Soul, right? Which is the largest festival in the state of California, right along Crenshaw Boulevard. Same thing. When we first proposed that, that's a little dangerous. You're going to bring all these black folks onto Crenshaw Boulevard. We are, on an annual basis, has over 350,000 people and 400 to 500 businesses along Crenshaw. We are the largest economic empowerment event in our community on an annual basis. And what we know is, if you give us quality, if you give us care, if you treat us with the respect that we deserve, then everything's going to be all right. Mm-hmm. Because those young people that people refer to as gangbangers, well, we know those are our children. Those are our nieces. Those are our nephews. We can police and take care of ourselves if we are given the opportunity to do that. So for me, it's about raising the quality of life for our community. Now, it's not just tenants. We have to understand as developers that we have a responsibility as best we can to include African Americans and create opportunities for us to participate in these projects. For us, we have an African American insurance company that insures all of our properties, right? We use African-American architects who design the remodels and the construction of almost all of our projects. We try and use African-American contractors and African-American businesses in everything we do, because that creates an economic empowerment and an economic environment that can let us thrive. Look, I'm a big advocate, and I understand the need for affordable housing in this community, but if we have real jobs and real businesses and sustainable businesses, and we're able to fully engage in the economic process, then we don't need to be putting in applications for affordable housing. We just want some housing. And we can get a loan, and we can qualify for these just because we have jobs. Our community needs jobs. I said it to a reporter one time. Somebody asked me about, how do you describe Danny Sr.? And in many ways, beyond being a businessman, Danny Sr. is a philanthropist. The difference between an Orange County philanthropist and a South Central philanthropist is in Orange County, you know what they need? They need a museum. In our community, we need jobs. We need economic opportunity. And if we're fighting to bring to our community those things that we need, that's the definition of philanthropy. So that's what I do every day. That's what our company does every day to uplift and engage our community along the corridor and in any community that we develop in, is to make sure that we are part of the conversation, from the developer to the tenants and everybody in between.
Thank you for that answer. I often say if we behave like some other cultures that focus on themselves and make sure the dollar doesn't leave their culture before it goes someplace else, we could be tremendously successfully profitable. In addition, one of the things is to make our communities balanced income communities, and that way older people aren't economically trapped, meaning we attract the younger generation to raise the quality of life, as Danny talked about. And so, Daryl, the question goes to you. Tell us about your efforts and work to help shape the difference in the corridor.
Well, it's a tough act to follow, these two gentlemen. But first, I have to take much exception to something you said earlier.
Okay.
And that is, as a person who grew up on the west side of Detroit, I think Detroit made the Temptations.
Oh, they did. I didn't say.
So I just had to clear that
No.
up.
Okay.
I had to
I stand
represent.
corrected.
I had to represent.
I stand corrected. All right. I accept. No, I didn't mean they made it. Everybody came out of Detroit. My apologies.
Yeah, I got to represent. But anyway, and that's a great metaphor for my career journey, because I saw when I grew up in the city of Detroit, when there was a lot of disinvestment, where investment was pulling out of that community, and it deteriorated. And so a central thesis of my business career in building two companies has been, if you make the investments in underserved communities, you will get positive change. And making the investment also means, in our business, is keeping the people who live there in place. And so our company, Avanth, we own and operate 106 apartment communities in 15 states that have about 16,000 apartment units. So we serve 16,000 families. Most of what we own are in Black and brown communities. And I could say that in every investment we make, that community gets better. And mainly because we focus on the keeping the fabric of the apartment communities that we buy, keeping the fabric together, but making them nicer, investing high-speed internet and all these things that communities need. In August of 2022, we bought almost 700 apartments in Baldwin Village. And when we bid on those apartments, and we own a lot of apartments in places like West Oakland, North Long Beach, we own 1,000 apartments there. I mean, we own a lot of large apartment communities, south side of Chicago, places like that. And immediately we knew that community was very concerned about gentrification and rents doubling. I mean, the average rent in that when we bought it was about $1,500 a month. Clearly, there are people there that are potentially charging as much as $3,000 a month, and so we wanted to have a strategy that would keep this property affordable for the people that live there. So, part of what we've done successfully around the country is partner with public agencies to create affordability in exchange for economic inducements. So we work with the Housing Authority for the City of LA, where we have a great relationship. We own a number of properties in LA, and we got them to commit to a tax abatement and to put affordability restrictions on. So we ended up putting 35% of the assets or at of the units serve people who are at 60% of AMI, 35% serve people who are at 80% of AMI, area median income, and then the rest are market. And we got a tax abatement for 70% of the taxes every year. Now that tax abatement is the equivalent to about a 35 or 40% rent increase. And so economically it works. And most importantly, we're putting $40 million of renovations into that property. And our contractor is African American owned. If any of you know Tim Coffey, TEC Construction, Tim is our contractor. Raw Architects are our architect, another firm of color. And so, we want to, recirculate the investment dollars. And I'd say the key to the things we do, not only in LA, but everywhere, is capital. And a little shout out to JP Morgan Chase. They've provided financing on probably over $100 million of financing for us over the years, so they are a very important partner. So thank you. And at the end of the day, that is the game changer, that we have to attract capital. It cannot all be public capital. We've had some success in raising institutional capital. One of our investors in Baldwin Village is Kaiser. They bought into our business plan. And, the great thing about some of the residents that live there, they actually are going to have rents go down, which is rare when someone buys a property. But again, I think it's a combination of public-private creativity and capital. I mean, it's still, that drives redevelopment in our communities.
Thank you. So from an investment standpoint, when you buy a large apartment development with the target of lowering rents for some people and accommodating others, you have to figure out how that's going to perform in your performer, right?
Yes.
And so that I guess is very beneficial when you preserve some of the folks that live there, as well as getting the upper income to move in to pay off the difference, and your tax abatement that you get from the city.
Well, one of the things that people think, and you hear the word gentrification, and it's kind of my view is it's a great thing to have higher income people move in a community. It's a bad thing when you displace people who are lower and moderate income. Right. And we own, for instance, a building in Chicago where 1/3 are market residents that they pay $3,000 a month. 1/3 they pay about $1,500 a month, and then 1/3 are public housing residents. And people say, well, how does that work? I say, 1, you give everybody the same apartment, and 2, you treat everybody the same way, and it works just fine. And sometimes we believe mixed income housing is a good thing.
It is. To go on, I guess move forward. I want to ask Danny the next question. Tell us your thoughts for the future of the corridor and strategies you see that could achieve it.
Well, I think that, the work that Councilman Marquise Harris Dawson is doing, the work that Councilwoman Hutt is doing, and Councilman Kern Price, and all of the city of Los Angeles in improving the Crenshaw Corridor improves the quality of life for everybody. So I see that, I applaud them, and I appreciate their investment. One of the things that you see a lot of construction that's going on up and down Crenshaw. The question and the concern that I have is how much of it are we involved in, right? How much of it is our community driving it? How much is our community participating in it? How much is our community economically overall benefiting from it, that's really the question that concerns me the most, right? We need to make sure that we are in a position to be able to be involved for the long haul, right? We have to be driving development, and we have to be driving ownership. You know, one of the problems that we've had on numerous occasions with major issues in our community is that we didn't have ownership.
Right.
You know, there's been a lot of conversation about Leimert Park, as an example, and what's going to happen with Leimert Park and all of the local small community businesses that are there. But the truth is, all of those local small community businesses are just tenants right now. They don't own, we don't own those buildings, right? The Leimert family owns those buildings. Big industrial, big corporations own those buildings. And until we have ownership, we really can't control the outcome. You know, that's a lot of conversation about the mall and black ownership, right? The importance of it. But the truth is, we didn't own the mall. We've never owned the mall. From the time Hagen remodeled the mall, it was a white-owned mall, right? Quentin Primo, who was a really good guy, he was in charge of managing it, and he had a financial investment in it. But the truth is, LaSara owned the mall, right? And when they made the decision to sell it, they made that decision for the highest bidder, right? We had a lot of conversation about don't let CIM buy the mall because, you know, they were Donald Trump's investors and all that. While we're sitting there screaming about it, CIM is less than a mile away, building up everything on the other side of West Angeles Church, right?
Adams Boulevard.
Where were we on that protest, if that was our real concern?
Right.
We have to have ownership. We have to have investment. We have to have control of what our corridor and what our community is going to look at. If not, unfortunately, we're just kind of screaming at the moon.
Right.
And so we've got to sit here and come up with a plan that says, how do we own it? How do we control it? Because that's the only way we are going to be able to mandate change in our community.
Amen. Jason, I'm going to ask the same question to you. What strategies do you see for us to achieve the future of Crenshaw, and what do you see that future being?
So I'm gonna make sure this mic is working. Hello, hello. So I love this conversation because I'm always open to challenging what we mean by we own it. 10 people, 5 people, or everybody. Because what I believe is potentially possible is social and workforce housing in South LA for black people, right? But that would mean we would participate in our public processes and be able to move the policy to make that happen. We would be able to advocate for value capture that actually captures and bonds the future value of our land and puts it in a fund for us to stay in place. It takes our land off of the speculative market and uses what we know is being used against us as a way to keep us in place. That is community ownership. Now, I think that would take all of us then coming together as a community to start advocating for a collective solution and not dividing solutions amongst the people that already have the access. I can speak freely about that because I'm a nonprofit advocate and I'm working in the public right away. I have the freedom because I think that my job is to advocate for what I believe is a collective solution, because that's what I believe we can all play a role in, right? That fund could be actually servicing the black developers to build the properties that we're talking about today. It could also fund the solve for the reverse mortgage pandemic that we're having right now in our community. We can solve the wealth transfers with the taxes and the tax abatements when people die and aren't able to hold on to their housing. We can do that through this type of measure that other cities do all the time for themselves. So when you see West Hollywood doing tax increment financing, when you see Chicago do it a lot on the south side, when you see these other places, that is actually enabling people with the privilege to benefit off of the future value increase of their land. So when we're talking about land, let's talk about why it's depressed in value and why they're using us and our progress as a way to speculate and make money off of it. Let's talk about it, right? Because the affordable housing and affordability mean two different things. Now, I have a finance degree, so I know that finance is a feeling, and how you feel around the money is actually dictating your relationship with it. So, affordable, say your number. Everybody's different. That's how they treat performance, right? Depending on the community and that piece of paper, whatever that number says, it could be different. How do we change that? How do we change the assessment value process? How do we allow people arbitrarily to come in our community and tell us how much our land is worth? How do we do that? Let's make that a public process as well. Because the community ownership, you have ownership of your community through your public representation, right? What Mr. Bakewell said. We have advocates in our community, locally, all the way through the federal level. We have alignment that is not anywhere else in this country to create solutions that benefit you, us, explicitly.
And we have the most expensive land in the country as well.
Exactly.
So the opportunity exists. It's funny, you speak about, Portland did a very successful land trust entity that I looked at. And what had happened is it allowed people in the community to put investments into that trust. That trust then would buy land in the community as the transformations, or ahead of the transformations that were going on. If a person needed their money immediately, that trust had a letter of credit from the bank that said you can call your investment at any time if you have an emergency relief, right? But that trust started acquiring land near transit development, and as things started happening, like in Crenshaw, that minority influence-owned trust company was able to participate in those investments. And that's a way of helping people start to get generational wealth, where you start making possibility for us to control land and influence the development. That also gives you political power because the trust owns the land as well.
And so keep in mind, what I did say is that the fund supports the foundational layer of what we're talking about, right?
Right.
So we don't have to then go to the bank.
Right.
We have a bank, right?
Right.
And so the developments that these fellows are building, it comes from that, right? And then we actually leverage that capital so we de-risk the investment.
And so then you start getting a unique opportunity where you have an entity that has land ownership in our community. You have capital sources such as Daryl, Danny, and others that are able to do those deals. And that helps elevate black and brown participation at a greater scale, where you don't have to look at CIM using CalPERS money to buy up all of Adams Boulevard and then go in with the largest church and say, we're going to turn your land into revenue for you. But it also takes care of CIM first and things of that nature. But Daryl, I'm going to pose the same question.
I got a CalPERS. One thing that's fascinating about that, you said CalPERS money.
CalPERS, CalSTRS.
CalPERS, CalSTRS. Between the two of them, they have about $600 billion of assets.
Is it?
600, 700 billion. And this is something that everybody in this room should be up in arms about. Okay, who pays into that pension fund? 60% of the people that pay into that pension fund are black and brown. Okay, Caltrans. When you see people working at Caltrans, that's CalPERS.
Yeah, I'm helping.
And so, but the travesty is that less than 2% of their assets are in the hands of folks of color.
Right.
And everybody should be pissed off at that.
Right. I think Victor Farling got access to it for a while.
We did as well.
Yeah, and but CIM dominated it, And actually, it's and there was another entity out of New York that was dominating it as well. And they were expecting 10% return on their capital or something like that, I think it was. And then you start thinking, as Daryl said, 60% of that is your money, and then they're telling the investors, we got to get 10% return, but they're not making any concessions in our communities.
Michael, let me chime in real quick,
Okay.
and you know, I think Daryl can relate to this, and this is a question that the development community and people who are running their business, we need to ultimately take to the bank, and we need to have this conversation. So we all witnessed post George Floyd all of these economic institutions and businesses who made, you know, these prophetic statements about how they were going to put money and invest in the black community and do the right thing and all of those things, which, let's be honest, they were supposed to have been doing all along, right? That's the first part of it. But now, let's, you know, if I take, you know, my business, if I take Daryl's business, if I take those of us who are in this business, you know, I use this building right here. So this building right here, which is in the heart of the black community, which has Chase as a tenant, which has Urban League as a tenant, who has Ivy McNeil and Wyatt, which is the largest black law firm, as a tenant here in this building, RFP Insurance, which is one of the largest insurance brokers in the area right here. I have good tenants. I have experience as a developer. I've got a financial statement. I've got experience. I've got everything that I got good credit. So therefore, I'm not a hard loan to get, right? I'm not struggling to get a loan. So what I know is when they approve this loan, whoever the bank is, be it JP Morgan, Bank of America, Northern Trust, whoever approves the loan, they're going to say, here's 15, 20, $50 million that we invested into the black community. Mm-hmm. But what did the black developers get? Mm-hmm. Did we get a special rate? Or did we just get the rate? Well, you know, rates are high and everybody's getting charged. So what did we get as the black developer in this process? The bank got a lot of credit. We know they're going to show you all your buildings and all your stuff in Baldwin Park as their investment in the black community. They're going to show all of my investment. They're going to, we put $25 million in Compton. And we put, you know, $10 million on Crenshaw. But I qualified for that. Right? I qualified for that just like anybody goes and qualifies to get a car loan. There was nothing special. Where's the black interest rate? Did you lower the credit score requirements? Did you? Right. Nobody's asking that question, and when we ask the banks that question, they go, right. That's a good question.
Okay, Jason got something to say, and then I'm going to try to get to the next question.
One of the questions that we actually asked here in the conference room a while ago is how do we use the philanthropy branch of the bank to actually de-risk the loans that you're trying to get people to take, right? Because the metric of loan generation, it could actually be a forgivable loan. It could be a loan that people, it's impossible to default from. Or it could just be a grant. You could do things like that with people, and you could do things on paper that actually change the risk valuation it takes for people to take the loan in the first place.
Hurry up.
Because the relationship with
Okay.
the bank and the
All right, I got to bring this home because I've been told I got 5
Greg
minutes.
is
Greg just
giving us the wrap.
Whispered in my ear, 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask each of you a question real quickly. What is the dollar amount that you believe necessary for Crenshaw to be successful, and where do you see those investments be made first? Daryl, I'll talk to you.
Infrastructure,
Right on.
$5 billion.
Right. Okay.
I think $5 billion of infrastructure improvements is the start. I think that we have to have access to capital as developers in our community that far exceed $5 billion so that we can own, develop, promote our black businesses and our black ownership.
Okay.
And the last thing that I would say on top of that is these banks and institutions need to put money forward that can rewrite those systems that lock us out.
Right. Okay. Jason?
So there's a great group out of North Carolina, 3C, that has actually built a model to see the depression of land values from redlining, and they actually do it from then and show it on a chart to show you where your this study, is to, then we have to actually take that value 60 years into the future. Because equitable development is actually the overcompensation for the systemic oppression that we've had for the equal amount of time, and then we get to where we are, right? So we actually need to probably 10x that 5 billion.
Okay.
Is where we need to be.
So right now, we have a great opportunity. It's funny, the banks that are doing the mergers have committed $310 billion after the George Floyd murder to say that they're going to invest into black and brown communities. And so one of the things for us is how do we leverage that commitment? And the reason when I showed you those homes for first-time buyers is for those to serve as equity, to be able to tell the bank, this black and brown family has 25 to 30% equity for the loan they're asking you for, and they have income property. I think also those banks should make that interest rate lower to those homeowners and then run the loans through local CDFIs where the CDFI can start to earn 1% interest rate. And so maybe not here, but I'll talk about a project we're working on for 100,000 black and brown families to get that type of deal. And we met with DOT in March, and we have an application for $1 billion in infrastructure improvements for a half-mile radius. But we have to form the team with the county to make that application valid. They have $110 billion in uncommitted funds, and we're asking for $1 billion per transit station, which are 20 in underserved communities. And then the strategy is to use private capital to start the work on the projects immediately, where you start rebuilding like Leimert Park, then you start doing the underground utilities, then you get to rebuild the sidewalks. And the purpose is to create 7 to 10 years worth of work opportunities where we can nurture generational growth and children's security in terms of what they can be as an adult. I think also one of the things that everybody talked about, to me an idea is to have a black and brown master development team, entity, to influence the investments and manage it because cities don't have the human and financial resources to do it, and we don't have redevelopment agencies. But I think those are things we can consider. First of all, I want to thank each and every last one of you all for what you're saying and most importantly for what you're doing. I want to encourage everybody to read a book called White Space, Black Hood by Cheryl Cashin. It talks specifically what Jason mentioned. You pay taxes, and just what Daryl talked about. You pay taxes to the federal and state government for road and infrastructure improvement, but we get out-politicked for where that money goes. And I'll give you a prime example. Beverly Hills and the West Side did not want the Purple Line to go beyond La Cienega. Instead, when they learned about what real estate development and transit does, they out-politicked the West Santa Ana branch community, which is 90% Hispanic. They out-politicked our community, and they got $2 billion contracts approved to put the subway all the way to Westwood. Why? Because they knew it would make real estate values go up, and it helped them generate the money to deal with the homeless issue by the Veterans Center. That pissed me off.
And we're working on the tip right now.
Yes. And so those are things where I advise you to read the book because, as Jason says, we get out of politics with our dollars going to other communities that we want to see the same developments. But with that, I want to thank each and every last one of you all for the work that you do. Congratulations. And so now, white space, black hood. It means black people pay for white spaces. So, so now we're going to go into the next panel, and I don't know who's going to do the introduction, but I'll just say the panel's going to talk about preserving black heritage while advancing black enterprise. And again, thank you, everyone.
We have a 10 to 15-minute break.
Okay.
You just had to give me a hard time about intimidations.